What's going on, growers? It's James Prigioni coming to you live from Jersey. Today, I'm going to show you a simple and easy way to effectively stake and prune your tomatoes. Let's go! I've been growing tomatoes for 10 years now, and throughout that time, I've grown the tomatoes almost every different method or style that you can. I've allowed them to just sprawl on the ground and bush out, and lately I've been doing this method where I use these strings. I take the strings, I tie them to an apparatus that I've built up top, and then I bring them down to the tomatoes. I then use these little clips and just tie the tomato up as it goes. This is a very convenient and easy to manage system, but it's not the simplest one. In order to actually have this system, you're gonna have to build a contraption or something to tie up to. So let me show you the simple and easy method that I've used in the past and that I still use today in different sections. Let's move into the old food forest where I have some tomatoes that I need to stake and prune. I'll show you the method that I'm using. So, first thing to note is that when we're staking and pruning these tomatoes, we are doing this for indeterminate tomatoes. You have determinate and indeterminate. The indeterminate tomatoes are going to grow all year long. They're going to produce flowers and fruit up to frost. Your determinate tomatoes, they're only going to get about 4 feet tall or so, and they're only going to produce about 1 round of fruit. So this is for indeterminate tomatoes. So what we need is a good stake. This is a nice piece of bamboo that I got locally. One of my friends has bamboo that's just growing in their backyard. So if you can get a nice piece of bamboo, this is a great thing to use. One thing to note though is you want it to be kind of brown on the bottom if you can, because you don't want it rooting in the ground because the bamboo does become invasive. And you want a piece that's at least like 6 or 8 feet tall because these tomatoes are going to get very large. The idea with pruning up these tomatoes, what we're doing is we're essentially just going to be taking out the suckers, what they call the tomatoes, and encouraging and forcing this plant to grow up one single stem. And there's a number of beneficial reasons that we prune these tomatoes to a single stem and then tie them to a stake. I'll get into those as I'm doing it, but I want to show you the how-to of actually doing it. So as I bring you in close, we'll notice that this tomato up top, you'll see, the top is where the leaves are unfolding from. You can see these young leaves that are unfolding, and this is where the tomato is going to continue to grow straight up towards. That's exactly what we want. As we come in on the inside, you'll notice we have these crotches between where the stem meets the fan leaf. You'll see that there's a top right there. That's a sucker. The tomato leaves are unfolding and it'll continue to grow. And then the tomato will want to grow in that direction. So what we want to do is just take these small little suckers or tops and remove them when they're young like this with our finger. It's important to remove them when they're young. If you have to cut out these suckers, then you're waiting too long. And I want to show you this when the tomatoes are young, because this is the time to do it. You want to get out on it when the tomatoes are young so they're not wasting all their extra growth on things that you're going to pull out later. So you'll notice we'll remove all these suckers. So we took out that one, this one here, and this one. Another thing we want to do is remove any of the leaves about 1 foot or 2 feet that are close to the ground. Because what will happen is we'll get a big rain and some of the rain will splash down, it'll knock into the soil, and some of those soil-borne organisms will actually get onto your leaves and you can develop some blights and stuff. So in order to avoid this, we remove those lower leaves. If these lower leaves stay on there, they could transfer some of that blight up to the higher leaves. So we'll take those leaves off. After our tomato is finished, you'll notice all we really have are these fan leaves and then the top, which is unfolding. That's exactly what we want. Next, we're going to put a stake into the ground, which you could have done earlier, and then we're going to tie this tomato to the stake. The tomato is all pruned. Now let's get it staked up. So for this stake, I'm going to move the wood chips out of the way because I don't want them blocking me at all. You notice a very large stake, and this would be good to put in before the tomato even goes in the ground, but I had to get these first. When you put these stakes in, if you can have someone help you, you want to, it's a good idea to have someone help you because you really want to get these in deep, because once they start to get really top heavy, the tomato, they could start to lean over. You don't want to tip it on you. So I'm going to try to get this in as deep as I can. That looks pretty good. Next, let's get this tomato tied to the stake. What we don't want to use is a string like this, because if we use a string like this, it's going to cut into the stem of the tomato when we tie it up like this. We do not want that. Instead, we want to use something like this. This is just an old shirt that I use. I just cut it up in a strip. It's cotton, it's soft, it's not going to cut into the tomato, and it's free. So it's a really nice thing to use in my opinion. What I'm going to do is just take this, I'm going to tie it to my stake first, tight, so that it doesn't slide up and down too much. It would be nice tying it above this knot of the bamboo, but I can't. Then I'm just gonna bring it around the tomato. Then I'll bring it back around here. Then I'm just gonna tie it to this back side. Here. Doesn't have to be very tight, but it's gonna help support the tomato. And then as this tomato continues to grow, we'll just continue tying more sections of it. This will give this tomato a nice support, just like that. If you don't want to use a shirt like this, what you can use is these little clips. These clips are simple and effective as well. I showed you how I use them for the strings to tie it up, but I also use them for this. Just like the other one, it would be good if I tied it above the knot here, but I'm just gonna tie it down here. I'm gonna tie the string to the post. And then I'm just gonna take this clip and just put it in that string like that. Pull it back and then just clip it on. It's a little easier than using the shirts, and it's effective too. So that's a real simple way to do it. And then as the tomato continues to grow, I'll just continue following the same pattern of removing those suckers and tying it to the stake. There's a number of great benefits that come from pruning and staking your tomatoes like this. One of them is that the fruit is going to be up off the ground. So when you just allow your tomatoes to just sprawl out everywhere, then a lot of times the fruit will drop and sit on the ground, and that's when a lot of it rots and gets the pathogens. Another great thing about this is when you grow them up the stakes, it's going to be so much more airflow and so much more light. And there's going to be less leaves because you're pruning out some of those suckers. So with more airflow and more light comes less ability for the plants to develop diseases. And if they do develop diseases, like on the lower leaves, then it's going to be less likely that they're moving it up the plant because you're pruning those lower leaves and stuff. Another thing about it is it's going to make harvesting so much easier and more convenient for you because you're going to be able to see all the fruit and just come out and harvest it. I've had it in the past where I've had tomatoes that were ripe on some of the bushier plants when I allowed them to bush out, and you don't even know the tomato is ready because you couldn't see it, it was hidden behind something. So this makes it easy and effective, but gives you a better chance of bigger harvests too because you can actually see the fruit. So this whole system is enjoyable in my opinion. It's easy to manage and it results in bigger harvests. So there's no reason not to prune and stake your tomatoes. Another great benefit of pruning and staking your tomatoes is your ability to grow more in a smaller section and end up with a higher system yield. Let me explain this for a second. When it comes to growing tomatoes, if you allow them to just bush out and sprawl, then you're gonna have to space your tomatoes about 4 feet apart in order for them to actually grow well. But if you're pruning and staking your tomatoes like I have here, you only have to plant them about 1 to 2 feet apart. When it comes to each individual tomato, it's likely that each tomato will have a lower yield than if you allow it to sprawl, but overall the system yield will be bigger because you can fit more tomatoes in a smaller space. And one of the reasons that the yield is going to be bigger is because when we're pruning and staking, we're getting this whole added element of vertical growing. That's why it's so important. So when we utilize this vertical space, we're just, getting all the space that was never being used. So that's why pruning and staking is such a great way, not only to increase your overall harvest, but also get better fruit too, because the fruit can get actual sunlight. If you live in a spot that's very hot though, and that has really strong summer heat, you may just want to leave a few suckers in the middle of the plant just so they can shade some of the fruit if you're in a location that the fruit gets sun scalded on. That's today's video, growers. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you get out there and try the prune and stake method on some of your tomatoes. In my opinion, it makes growing just more enjoyable in general because it's easier to manage, and it's nice to just go out there and grab a tomato off the vine when it's up top instead of like searching in a bushy plant for one. Before I let you go, I wanted to mention something that I kind of forgot, and it has to do with nearing the end of the season. When your tomato is very tall and it's nearing the top of the stake, what you want to do is just remove that sucker at the top, just so the tomato continues producing fruit a little lower for you. Because when it's that high, you're gonna want some fruit a little lower. I also wanted to thank, before I let you guys go, Alyssa Albert. Thank you for your new channel membership. Thanks for being a part of Team Grow. Me and Tuck really appreciate it. And before we let you guys go, we just want you to remember to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and share with your friends. Don't forget to check out the merch down low, because me and Tuck will be back at you again with another one real soon. We